Hi everyone. Welcome to my talk. So first of all, I would like to introduce myself. I'm Emma. I'm based in London. I'm a cloud security architect from EPAM. So basically, I am a consultant. I love design and architect everything in the cloud environment for my clients. And EPAM is a technology consultancy with strong engineering focus. Just a bit of introduction of the company. And we help our clients to accelerate and integrate security into their digital transformation programs. So that's the introduction. I just want to address 3 questions in my talk today. So why are we here? So why are metrics so important in the conversation about cloud security? And why, what metrics matters to you and your business, and how can you establish effective and meaningful cloud security KPIs? So these are the questions I'm trying to address in my session, and then I hope that you can get something valuable out of it. So before we dive in, I just wanted to give you a quick overview of what we'll be covering today. So first, I will discuss the challenges that we all experience about metrics, as developers and cloud practitioners. And then we'll move on to some techniques and best practices. I will share a couple of examples from my past project where those techniques have been adopted. And then at the end, I will give you a wrap-up of the key takeaways. So what is cloud security metrics? A simple Google search gave me this definition. In fact, a survey conducted by the Palo Alto said that by 2024, it's predicted that workload in the public cloud is going to be 64%. So when we talk about cloud security metrics, it actually covers multiple domains: instance response, identity access management, and software development, and so on. So in my experience with so many customers, about 90% of them have prioritized security metrics as their top priorities in the security program. I think if you are here, you probably, your company probably experienced the same. So your company probably struggle with taking an action, especially for the senior management visibility. I'm just gonna pause here. I want to ask, how many of you have believed that you have a well-established security metric program in your company? Please raise your hand. Okay, that's why I'm here. Yeah, I like that response. Yeah, so firstly, what is going wrong here? So there is a disconnection between security and the business goals. And the board might not see the relevance, and the team lacks budget. I mean, we all have limited budget and resources that we have to do our BAUs, and security metrics is something that's far more important, but expensive sometimes. So the team lacks budget or resources to handle them. And with the amount of data available from different tools, metric data can be overwhelming. So even if you are able to track the security metrics, then the amount of false positive alerts could generate bad metrics. And I don't know whether you have heard about the terms as gaming metrics. So sometimes company wants to have some metrics that look good to the board, but actually it doesn't mean anything to your business because they either not meaningful or they are not actionable. Yeah, so tracking metric is not just measuring success in security, but it's a tool that allows you to communicate security risk to your senior management. So let's talk about why tracking metric, cloud security metrics, isn't just a nice to have, but it's an essential task. So we want to answer those questions. How effective and efficient is your cloud security operations? how effective is your tool and your processes, and metrics help you to pinpoint weaknesses in your security program. And overall, it also allows you to track the security posture trends in your company, in your business. So everything all comes down to one key point, which is business risk reduction. So why do we talk about metrics? It's all about reducing our business risk. At the end of the day, you want to be able to manage the risk. So before we dive deeper, I would like to clear up some confusions around metrics and KPIs. So these two terms are used interchangeably, but there are some key differences. So metric is simply a measurement, a snapshot of what's happening right now. But KPI, on the other hand, is goal-oriented. They track the progress towards a specific target. So think of them, a KPI like a fitness tracker. It tells you how close you are to your, to your fitness goal. So, for example, the mean time to remediate an incident is a metric. It's just a value, but saying that we want to reduce that value by 25% this quarter, that is a KPI. So it sets a target that we want to work towards. So there are a number of ways that we can use to design our metric program. On the page here, I've outlined 7 steps that I follow, but you don't need to follow all the steps. But it's different for each of the organizations that we work with. So you can customize this as if you see it fit. And I won't drill down into the details of those steps in this session because we have limited time. But the bottom line is I recommend to start design a metric framework for your process. So how to get your start to think about metrics. So these are the questions that are gathered that can help you to start thinking about metrics, what qualifies as a classical metrics. So some people think about that metrics are just for the CISO and the senior management, but actually, sometimes security team wants to track metrics that can be shared with cloud ops, for example. So the metrics that is being shared with the cloud ops is very different to the metrics that's being shared with the board. You might end up with creating different dashboards. And you want the metrics to be actionable, so you want it, you can't just measure, but you want to also provide a clear insight of how your security can be improved. And the tool that you use and how easy and feasible that you can use that tool to track and collect the metric. So it's better if you can actually use the current tools that you have to collect metrics than just creating new tools to collect metrics, because that would be more expensive. And finally, metrics needs to have a context. So that means what is the story you want to share and tell about your cloud security posture to your business stakeholders? So are they looking for trends or threats and how security posture in your cloud native environment has been improved or getting worse? So the kind of story you want to tell your target audience it affects the kind of metric that you want to collect. So there are some key metric criteria that have been developed over the past years. Again, I won't go into details of them, but I just provide them here for you to look into if you want to use them as your base criteria. So, but the 2 points that I would like to emphasize here are actionable and outcome-driven. So organization wants to identify areas where security efforts are for sure and take corrective actions on it. And in terms of outcome-driven, you want your metrics not only reflect how effective security policies is being followed, and you want to enforce that within your organization. So there are two different approaches that I have been using to establish my KPIs. The first one is top-down approach. So you start with the bigger picture. You think about your business goals, your drivers, what do you want to achieve? Is it to increase your revenue, customer satisfactory, or regulatory compliance? So with the information, you can define your KPIs. And then you can look at how to measure them and the capabilities and tools that you can use to establish that. On the other hand, the bottom-up approach is the other way around. So it begins with looking at the raw data points, collecting from each of the security tools, and then you compare and then you establish the relationship between those data points. And then you define the key metrics and KPIs that can be actionable based on those data points. I will explain that in a minute. So I just talked about the bottom-up approach. Now I would like to introduce a concept which is called causal loop diagram. So I don't know how many of you have heard about causal loop diagram. So it's a technique that I've been using to establish the relationship between our metrics. So why do we do that? Because we want to understand the dynamics in our system. And the causal loop diagram is a visual tool that can help us to achieve that. So it maps out those relationships. So I'm just going to quickly go through the basic of a causal loop diagram. So you have the relationship between the different data points. So in this case, our data points are metrics. And you have different nodes, so they are data points. And you have arrows that representing the connections between those data points. A minus sign in the arrow means that it's an inverse relationship, which means that an increase of one variable leads to a decrease of another one. A plus sign means that if an increase in one variable, it will lead to an increase of another one. So let's take an example from our diagram here. So if you notice that the number of security incidents, the relationship between the number of security incidents and the mean time to detect. So this indicating a balancing loop, because the higher the security incidence rate, it would eventually slow down your detection rate. So hence, it increases your time to detect. However, this relationship can change over time. If you think about it, because you have longer detection time, this might lead to more incidents. Then that forms a cycle loop. So understanding those relationships is key to establish your key metrics. I will explain that in the next slide. So by understanding the relationship between the metrics, you can prioritize which one are the most critical to monitor and improve. For example, if you identify a key metric that is significantly influenced by another, you can focus on improving that latter to achieve better results. So let's have a look at this example. So this is a typical infrastructure as code compliance workflow. You might have already adopted it in your company, or you might not, but it's not that important in my talk. But I just want to explain a few points. So you've got the template stored in the GitHub, and then that template gets scanned over time for security vulnerabilities, and your security team would action on it. So what are the metrics that I can establish from that workflow? So those are the metrics that I collected. So these are just to be mindful that this is not all the metrics that I can collect from that workflow, but it's just a simple example just to explain how it works. So if you look at this diagram, notice that both the policy violation rate and the average time to remediate have multiple incoming relationships, but zero outgoing efforts. So that means they are influenced by multiple various of data relationships, but not a direct influencer themselves. So they can be a key metrics for you. So You can establish a target to reduce average time to remediate, which is also controllable. So those two metrics that I think it would be my key metrics in this instance, because they can be quantifiable and measurable and also actionable. So think about all the elements that form a key metrics. Now we have determined our key metrics. What's next? So we want to establish a KPI that actually works for our company. So in order to understand that, we need to understand the risk appetite of our company. So that's when the protection level agreement comes into play. So this is a concept that has been introduced by Gartner. So I didn't invent it myself, just to be clear. It's a tool that you can use to provide a way to translate security into the language of business. And it's like the service level agreement, but an agreement of protection between the security team and the business stakeholders. So business decide the amount of amount of the budgets they would like to invest into the protecting their security environment. And then the security team can align their efforts with that level of protection. So you want to balance the business needs with the security requirements, given that you understand your risk appetite. So in this case, security is not just the responsibility of the security team. It's also a conversation between security team and the business. So this is how it works for KPI. For the protection level agreement. I kind of created this workflow because I use it. And so it's a 5-step process. So firstly, we want to figure out what actually matters to the business, what are the absolute must-have, and how much risk we are comfortable with. And then knowing this answer sets the direction for our next step. So then we collect our assets. We want to know what is in our inventory, what is in our cloud inventory, and we can figure out which one of them are the most critical one. And then we establish, we have a conversation with the business and establish how much we can invest in order to protect those critical assets. So the most important thing is to match the level of protection to how valuable and risky the asset is. So once we know the level of the protection, we can match the security measures to those protections to protect those assets. Then we can establish the KPI out of that. So this means that we, for example, I'm going to give you an example here. So in this case, I have used the protection level agreement to prioritize our remediation investment. In this example, we have a time to patch, which is our KPI. And how do we set the target for that KPI? So we have different markets, which means different scope for our KPI. So for example, in the consumer market, we have critical system and we have internal system, and they have different protection level. In terms of critical system, our target is 35 days of protection level agreement. And that is a discussion from our security team and the business. Then at the end of the period, the month, we discovered that 40 days was actually required to patch those vulnerabilities. Then we have a few decisions available to us. We either can increase our security budget to address the protection level agreement by 30 to 35 days, or by accepting the risk of this patching gap. So we have those options available for our security team to action upon. So now it's a conversation between the security team and the business. So that is something that needs to be happened. Okay, so now is the fun part of my talk, I think. Now we have go over the techniques. I would like to talk about a few case studies from my past projects. So the first example is a recent project that I've been working for. It's my client in the utility sector. The company is on their journey to migrate to the cloud, and they operate in different markets globally. And of course, they have an uptime of SLA requirements of 99%, and their goal is to leverage the cloud for operational efficiency. Okay, these are not that matters. The one truly matters is that they have established 70+ security metrics, but they really struggle to translate them into meaningful KPIs. So they were presenting 70 metrics to the board, and the board come back and say that we don't want all that metrics. You might think that this story sounds familiar. Yes, because it happens all the time. So this company wants to identify what are the key metrics. So in this case study, we have seen some, well, I would say bad metric or might not be the good KPIs, bad metrics that might not be the good candidate for the KPIs. So these are the ones that they have identified and they presented to their board, and the CISO needs to actually work on getting those KPIs to be meaningful. So what's wrong with those KPIs? So these KPIs seems to be legit, and we use them all the time. For example, the number of incidents of vulnerability or alerts detected in our environment. What's wrong with that metric? Because this can tell us about our threat landscape, but it doesn't tell us how secure the system is. So what happened that you identify those incidents? You can't really take an action upon those incidents. What do they actually mean for your environment? It doesn't tell how good your team will be able to remediate those vulnerabilities. It just tells you how bad your, how much, what is your threat landscape look like. And another example is the vulnerability metrics that is based on the CVSS risk scoring. So what's wrong with those scores? The thing is, so not all the vulnerabilities are exploitable. So if you are familiarized with the EPSS, I will explain that later, but some of you might already experience with that. So this, so the CVSS score, the problem is it doesn't review whether the vulnerability is actually exploited in the wild. So that's why we can use the EPSS to further enhance the KPIs. So these are the list of KPIs that we have worked with our clients to establish those KPIs and present it to the senior management, the CIO. So I won't go over each of them because it's a long list. Well, it's already a short list comparing to 70 metrics. But I just want to explain a few key points here. So we chose the CSPN score. If you know what cloud security posture management is, it's a tool that used to measure your security, your cloud security posture. So those scores can be sometimes they can be misleading. However, if you use them correctly, use them properly, they could be useful. For example, you might have project A and project B. They have completely different criticality. So project A might have sensitive information hosted on it, and project B might just a test environment. So understanding those different projects, it gives you you can establish a baseline of, for example, 60% across the entire organization, and then you can establish a target for your critical assets. Another example is that we have used the EPSS score. So EPSS score has been used to further enhance that time to patch KPIs. So we only want to track those vulnerabilities because the company wants to speed up the remediation efforts. So that is my second case study. So this company is very different. So first of all, this company has experienced a security incident. They want to develop a DevOps culture. So they want to shift left, and however, they don't know what kind of metrics they want to establish. But the good point about the environment is that they do have a lot of tools in their pipeline. So if they want to measure how good their team is, is dealing with the shifting left, the entire shifting left life cycle, they can use those tools to track how good the patching is, the remediation is. So that's how we do it. So these are the metrics that we have recommended for this company. So when choosing the metrics, we think about what are the data that may come out from the process, and that connected to the CI/CD pipeline. So for instance, how does the instance response process of the organization get involved? And how are there any data elements that could feed into our measurement of the security posture? So those are the questions that we have discussed with our clients. And because they have adopted the shift left approach, so we have suggested, for example, the metric production code pass automatic test. So it's used to demonstrate that the code vulnerabilities are being addressed early in the dev lifecycle. So all those measures that, depending on what the team wants to measure, and in this case, they would like to present these metrics with their cloud infrastructure team. So this kind of worked well for them. And another thing about it is they want to enhance the collaboration between the security team and the developer. So that's why we have focused on the development metric in this case that can further measure the speed of the development and the security, how security match that speed. Okay, so this is our EPSS. It's called Exploit Prediction Scoring System, EPSS. So EPSS essentially is a percentage of vulnerability ever exploited. So it used to, so EPSS is designed to tell the likelihood of vulnerability being exploited in the wild. However, it is not a perfect approach. So the thing is, it needs to work with a CVSS scoring system to build an effective vulnerability management program. So the higher the EPSS threshold, the higher the efficiency and the lower the coverage. So for example, if you have a high EPSS score, that means the amount of vulnerability that you want to patch or cover or prioritize is lower. So this is an example that we use to further improve our KPIs. So in this example, our KPI is the time to patch metric. So the average time taken to patch vulnerability with an EPSS score, we have defined it, for example, EPSS score of 70%, and we can set a target of reducing this time to 30 days or less in order to remediate any vulnerabilities with a score of 70%. So we can kind of play around with this EPSS score in our KPIs, really depending on your needs. And another technique that I would like to talk about is benchmarking. So benchmarking is something that you can use as a reference to guide your KPI target. So those are the benchmarks that we could use to compare our KPIs with the industry standards. So of course, this is not everything, but they can be potentially used for your KPI. So where can you collect your metric from? So these are the different technologies that I would suggest to start looking into your metrics. You have so many tools in your environment. Make use of them, right? And those are the examples of the tools that we can use to collect the metric from. The key point is we want to build automation to get the metrics out from those solutions. And these are just a few examples of tools that I have either used in the past or I just want to make the slides look better. So don't read too much into it because I'm vendor neutral. So it's just a few examples. So on the top line, I've just given you an example of a few examples of the observability and analysis for your cloud native environment like Kubernetes and microservices and containers. And also we've got the CSPN tools. You can collect the score from those CSPN tools. And don't forget visualization because you want to present it in a readable format for your metrics. The key point is we need to build automations. For example, EPS's feed, we want to integrate into our vulnerability management with building with automation. We don't want to manually track the EPS's scores because they change according to the threat landscape. So here's our key takeaway today. Just a few tips to get you started on the metric program. So firstly, KPI is not just for security team. They are business decisions. Remember, they are business decisions. They should be discussed with, between your security team and your business. And you need to align your metrics with your company's specific goals and risk appetite. And there is no one-size-fits-all solution. You want to customize your metrics to your unique environment and needs. So that's why I want to tell you, don't copy those metrics because they might not be appropriate metric or KPI for your team. So you need to think about that yourself. The thing is, if you don't have any metrics in your organization, you can actually start something very small. You don't have to do 70 metrics at once because that doesn't make sense. It's just gonna overload your team. And another thing is look for trends, patterns, and actionable insights. Don't just trace behind the numbers. So we want to choose the key metrics that have biggest impact, and then we can build from there. So my final point is there's no perfect metrics. It's about what actually matters. That's it. So I have 11 minutes left. I can take some questions, and I've got my LinkedIn profile here if you would like to connect with me. Welcome. Any questions? I don't know which one.
I've got a question about vulnerability tracking metrics.
Yeah.
So you mentioned you can't use CVSS alone or the NVD metrics because they don't take it into account whether an exploit is available. Is that correct? And that changes all the time, right? Whether whether an exploit is available or not. Is there a way to obtain information about exploits at scale, without researching every vulnerability individually? Is there a site that lists that kind of information and updates it regularly?
Yeah, unfortunately, there's no quick way. But the way I would use is to get those feeds directly into your vulnerability management tool. So I know those threats change over time, and the score can be changed from month to month, right? For example, if next month you have a new threat that has been exploited, and that becomes like a top news, then that score might change. So the thing is, you need to integrate your the threat feed, the EPSS score feed, into your vulnerability management program, vulnerability management tool. So in this way, you can have the updated feeds all the time. So there's no other quick way that you can actually track this, but apart from just automate the entire process. Does that sound reasonable?
Yeah, we actually do that, but
You
the
still,
pushback we get is, well, is there an exploit available or not? And with a small team, it's tough to keep researching each of those individually.
yeah, exactly.
Thank you.
Always.
I have a couple of questions. One is, you talked about setting thresholds or targets, and you had some examples about patching within 35 days. How do we know that target is the right target in terms of business impact, and whether it should be 5 days or whether it should be 60 days? How do we know?
Yeah, I have a question for you. Do you have a risk management process or risk management program in your company?
Yes.
Use that approach. So you want to understand what is the impact, right? You need to work with your risk management, the GRC team, in order to understand that impact. And then, as I said, it's a conversation between your security team and the business. So then you can decide, okay, we have this amount of money. So what can we achieve with this amount of money? Like this amount of budget, right?
Yeah, but no one knows whether 7 days is the right number, or 30 days or 60 days. No one knows whether that's an impact or not.
And I think a lot of that is based on experience. Like, for example, you can look at your security team, how they patched the vulnerability in the last 12 months, right? And then you can work out what is the average time they use to patch your vulnerabilities. And then you will be looking at the amount of money that they have been allocated to patch the vulnerability. And then you actually know, okay, so those are the amount of budget that we have been allocated, and this is the average number that we can actually achieve in patching those vulnerabilities. So if, for example, if your management said that, no, we can't accept that, we want to patch it much faster, then you can say to them, then we need to increase the budget. We need to adjust our protection level agreement, right? We need to adjust the right budget for those levels. Does that answers your question?
It partially does. It's a hard question.
It is.
So the other question I have is also a little harder. It's around attaching cost data into your KPIs to make it better, have a better insight into business impact or outcome.
Are you talking about the cost of?
Cost of, like you talked about how some metrics aren't so valuable, which I agree, like volume of vulnerabilities, that doesn't really say much in terms of actual cost or impact or risk, so how can we translate some of this into, like, how do we say this vuln costs this much? It's a hard question, but
it is.
I like your opinion.
So if you think about the cost, and then you think about what happened if you lost that data, right? What happened if there is a ransomware attack? And you can think about things like, lost that data means that our business operations will stop, and then that means that we have 2 days of outage. So then you can understand, without that two days of operations, how much we will lose because of that as a result, then that would be the cost. So that is a risk management kind of question. To be honest, I'm not risk expert, but that's kind of the process that I would think about when I'm deciding what the cost is.
Thank you.
Oh, next question.
Hi. So KPIs are definitely customized per enterprise or company, but I was just wondering if you were able to share what kind of KPIs have you seen in your experience that you present to the executive level?
What kind of KPIs?
Yes, because right now, from my experience, executives just care, how secure are we? What kind of metric can I give them to prove that, Like, for now, we can show we're patching on time.
Yeah.
Phishing metrics are low. But in your experience, what have you seen for your clients?
So one client is very different to another client. The question I always ask is, what is the story you want to tell? Like, for example, one of my clients, he's the VP of SecOps. So I ask him, what do you want your board to understand about those metrics, right? And then he said that, okay, we want to show that our security is actually improve over time. Then that's how we kind of identify what are the metrics. For example, CSPM score, that is something that's showing your environment have remediated some of those issues in your cloud environment. So these are one of the examples. And then things like how well the patching is another very popular another popular KPI that you can track. And of course, you need to combine with elements like the protection level agreement and the EPSS to further enhance that metrics. Because time to patch is a very simple metric. It might not really make sense without all those add-on features, right? It's just you have to think about what do you want to achieve, what is the story you want to tell your board, and what are they interested, right? And what is most important to your environment in order to make sure that you want to demonstrate that your security team is spending the right amount of money, and you want to ask for the right budget, because if you don't do that, then you won't get enough budget for your security team. So that's the two things you really want to care about, whether you have the right budget, whether your business understands what is the risk there, and how they can match that budget to protect your environment. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it's definitely a good direction. Thank you.
Of course.
So the key performance indicators are all about, they measure whether or not you are meeting the goals or are able to achieve the goals that you set, right?
Yeah.
But there is also a difference between, let's say, we were going to patch things within 30 days and it took us 35 versus we were going to patch things within 30 days and it took us 50, right? How, I would imagine that there's also another number under which you're saying, hey, this is acceptable risk or this is really unacceptable risk. Do you ever bring those into the understanding of the metrics so that you also know on the lower end when you've got a much more significant problem that you have to deal with?
Sorry, I don't quite understand your question. I think it's a little bit
Right.
complicated.
So in other words, one is do you have any recommendations for how you take, instead of just saying, oh, we did well, right? So we met our KPI. The KPI is an indicator that we, performed as we were spreading, but using metrics also to identify where you've got an elevated risk that you need to address.
I think that is a very difficult question to answer, to be honest. so if I get your question correctly, you're asking if you have metrics that, or KPIs that tells you how good your security team is doing their job. And then you have metrics that you want to know how much risk you are facing. Is that right?
Yeah, so exactly. So the idea might be like putting, like my thought is that like, it's one thing to say, okay, we met this, right? But if we didn't meet this, there's one level where I say, okay, we've got a little bit of an issue. We just need to do, slightly better. Maybe we need to increase this. Or there might be another level where I say, hey, below here, we've got a real, a much elevated risk. In other words, this isn't just, oh, we slightly missed our target. This is, there's a big problem, right? Do you ever recommend people or, put together some scales on that to help understand better the degree to which your program is doing well? It's not just a, hey, we met our goal or we didn't meet our goal, right? There's a scale to which I didn't meet my goal.
Yeah, of course. You need to assess what is the situation, right? So you need to assess what is the security controls that you have already in place. So when you're looking at why you don't meet your goal, you probably think about things like, have my security controls failed? And then so the thing is, my idea is that KPI or whatever the protection level agreement that you have is the starting point of identifying what is the issue that coming out of that. And then you will know, okay, we are not able to achieve that target, and what are the issues that causes this? And then you can investigate what is the root cause for not achieving that target, right? So in terms of the scale, I never had the experience of dealing with the scales, but I think that's a very good suggestion. I can look into that for my future work.